So our next speaker is Yan Wall, and he's going to talk about the elephant in the room, analyzing the presence of big tech in natural language processing research.
Cesar for the introduction, and welcome to my talk. So research is influenced by various different entities, such as governments, industry, and academia. And each of these entities have their various different vested interests. So we as a field in NLP should reflect on who has the power, what do those with power value, and in which direction are they moving our field. So this year, Stanford has released the AI Index report. And the very first mention they make in their top 10 takeaways is that industry races ahead of academia. So quote, in 2022, there were 32 significant industry-produced machine learning models compared to just 3 produced by academia. And so we see that things have been changing. And if you go into that report, they have dedicated sections for NLP as well. And many of these models are in fact large language models. So we see there is a trend and industry has much more presence in our fields. But what we yet don't know is how much is that presence? Who are these players and where do they publish? What topics do they publish in, for instance? And how much impact in terms of their citations do they have? And we'll cover 3 of these questions in more detail in this talk. And we invite you to look into the paper for more details on the others. Our method is split in 2 parts. We do a manual analysis of the ACL year 2022, in which we extract author information through their CVs and web pages. And we extract information such as their graduation year, country of origin, country of work, their job title, and their funding situation with big tech. And then we scale that analysis automatically to the entire ACL anthology by extracting information automatically through the author affiliations on the paper and acknowledgement sections which acknowledge funding of a big tech company. And the very first thing that interested me was how much is that trend really changing? We don't have a quantification of that yet, right? So what we looked at here is how many papers have been authored by someone who is affiliated with a big tech company over time. And it seems there has been a trend, an upward trend over time from 1995 to 2017, from 2 to 4%. But then we see that spike in 2017, where we have much more affiliated papers with big tech. And now we're at 14% of papers in the ACL anthology, which are affiliated with big tech. If we decompose that by different companies, we see that Microsoft and IBM have the largest share of papers in ACL or ACL anthology. But companies who are fairly young have been increasing quite substantially, such as Baidu, Meta, and Salesforce. So they've been growing exponentially over the past few years. If we look where the money is, so how many authors have been funded by big tech, we see a similar trend. So IBM, Alphabet, and Microsoft provide the most funding. And here the blue bars show how many authors have been awarded with grants by these companies. And the orange bars show how many authors have been affiliated with that company in that time. The next thing we look at is where is the presence, and where has many different subdimensions, but one of them being at which conferences do big tech companies publish. And these are mostly the top tier venues, EMNLP, ACL, and NACL. There has been also a swift change from the past to the present. So we look on the left at 2013 to 2015, and then 6 years later, 2019 to 2021. And while in 2013 to 15, only 4.5% of papers have been affiliated with big tech and ACL, this has been growing 5 times. Now every 5th paper in ACL is affiliated with a big tech company. And in EMLT, it's even higher. Every 4th paper, almost 24%, are affiliated with big tech. Another intuitive dimension of where is the geographic location. So where do authors come from that publish with big tech? And here we see that 35% of US authors have an industry affiliation, 31% of Chinese authors, and then Europe is usually lower in our analysis. This is a consistent result. The funding situation in Europe is more government-driven than industry-driven. The last dimension of where we want to look at is career stage. So here we differentiate between faculty members and students. So how many faculty members have received grants or awards, and vice versa, how many students have received scholarships and so forth. And overall, 66% of faculty members in 2022 have received industry funding, and 74% of students have received industry funding. Usually, again, these numbers are higher for the US and lower for the EU, and they are averaging at China. We also wanted to get a grasp on which topics do big tech companies focus on. Do they have specific topics in which they steer the direction of their research? And we see that larger companies often have a wide array of publications in different subtopics. Here we differentiate 15 subtopics in NLP, but some of them have specific focuses, like Salesforce focuses on dialogue system, and Alphabet has publications in different areas, but focuses a lot on machine translation. So they are looking at specific areas within NLP. Next up, we look at collaborations of industry and academia. So here we look at authors that are either dual affiliated or papers in which authors are from a university and a big tech company. And there exist specific collaborations, for example, between Microsoft and University of Washington or Salesforce and NTU. And many of these can be explained through geographic proximity. So Microsoft's headquartered in Redmond near Seattle, and that's also the home of University of Washington, and other geographic proximities reveal similar trends here. Finally, we look at how much citational impact do publications from big tech companies have versus universities. And here, important, citation is only one dimension of impact with various limitations. But here we compare, for example, the H-index of companies and universities, as well as the time-normalized median citations. So while Microsoft has a high H-index of 123, Alphabet 104, and Stanford of 81, if you normalize that by the time that these things have been published, and then take the median, these things get more comparable. So Microsoft has one of 2.8 time-normalized median citations, Stanford of 3.2. So it seems that big tech has some high-hit, high-impact publications, but over time, in terms of consistency, Stanford is more consistent in their publications. To summarize our experiments, we've seen this large spike of industry presence in 2017, and we're sort of at this inflection point in where we reflect on who has the power and what do those value now that we get more presence from them. Alphabet, Microsoft, and IBM are the largest grant providers in NLP and have most industry-affiliated papers, while Meta, Baidu, and Salesforce are growing rapidly over the last years. The majority of funding is happening in the US and China, followed by the EU. And we've seen that some particular interests of big tech lie in niche areas of NLP, such as machine translation or dialogue systems. And also we've seen that big tech collaborates highly with Ivy League universities and often through their proximity geographically. Some final considerations. Industry has a market effect on NLP, and they often bring research to applications in our everyday life, and therefore affect not only our research field, but wider society. And they do provide significant funding to our field, but conversely, they also benefit through taxes, through labor, through recruitment, and so forth. So it's a two-sided game. And there are legitimate concerns around the monopolization of infrastructure, especially with this large language model trend now. And there's concerns of the widespread adoption of technology before actual peer review, like with ChatGPT, where millions or hundreds of millions of people use it before we actually have a scientific paper that describes the methodology behind it. We also provide some final recommendations. We call for increased transparency so that we can analyze these industry trends in our research. For that, we need standardization of author information. Many authors do not acknowledge that they're affiliated with big tech in the acknowledgement sections or even in affiliations. If they work 2 days off, not in Microsoft, then they might not put it in the paper. We need further research to prevent the monopolization of infrastructure, and that could be through public infrastructure that is created for research and academia. And also we need to reflect on how peer review can be done if we don't have even access to the code, data, and models that are used in the peer review process. So the data and code is on GitHub. Thanks so much for coming. We're competing with a large language model session now, so I'm happy that so many showed up. And that's it. So I'm happy to answer your questions. Thank you so much.